We welcome our remote worshipers. We acknowledge our congregation in Shoto, Montana, who is watching us live at this moment as we get into the Word of God. We also know we have viewers throughout the United States and the world that make it their habit to join us at this time. So we continue today in our sermon series entitled A Journey to Freedom. We are going through the one-year Bible, and in the Old Testament section, we are watching God's children journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. And we reflect on that as we come together on Sabbath. Now, for quite a while, we had been in Leviticus and in the early part of Numbers, and you know how exciting that is not, right? Just reading the rituals and this sacrifice, and it's a little not exciting, and then you hit Numbers chapter 9, and it picks up in Numbers chapter 10, and this week, man, you've been all over the place. It's been a lot of action in this week's reading. I could have pulled 10 sermons from this week's reading, but you don't give me that much time to speak, so nor would I like to, but I had to pick one, and the one I picked spoke to me. I picked today's sermon because it spoke to my struggle. You're saying, I didn't know you had a struggle. Yeah, right. I wish you said that. Well, my struggle is that of accepting God's will rather than mine. That's my struggle. I know what your struggle is. Maybe you're the one without the struggle, but I struggle with accepting God's will over mine. Now, some of y'all, your theme song is Anywhere with Jesus I Will Safely Go. So some of you have no problem following God. That's not all of us. It may surprise you that some of us have opinions as to how life should be. Some of us have ideas of things should go a certain way. And listen, I like to spend a lot of time in the future figuring out how it's supposed to work out and bringing it into the present. Some people call that daydreaming. I like to call that visioning, okay? But I have a hard time when God comes up with things that don't line up with my plans or don't line up with the way I think things should be. Evidently, I'm not the only one. Because as I read in Sunday's reading of our one-year Bible, there were some people who had some issues with God's plans also. Here's the storyline. It's from Numbers 13. The text says that God tells Moses to send people out to spy the land. So Moses sends out 12 spies. They go check out the land. They're up in the north. They're in the south. They're all over. They get some massive grapes, and it takes 2 of them to carry, and it's an awesome experience. And they come back and tell the people, great land, too much. We can't handle it. It's too much. The people there are too strong for us. We're not going to be able to do it. So they struggle to accept God's will for them. They saw the land but couldn't see how they could take it. The people voted not to take the land. So God sent the people back to the wilderness. The people then decide to change their mind. Okay, all right, we don't want to go back to the wilderness. We're going to take the land. And God said, nope, not with you. You're on your own. So they got defeated. And, well, for the next 40 years, they're going to travel around the wilderness. And I asked myself, why did it go this way? Why did it have to go that way? How could it have turned out better? How can we do better than they? Wouldn't it have been better if they hadn't sent the spies? Yeah, what if they hadn't sent the spies? Wouldn't have that worked out a little better? And whose idea was it to send the spies anyways? Well, and what was the point? Well, if you look at Numbers 13, 1 and 2, the text tells us that God said, look at verse 1, and Yahweh spoke to Moses saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, everyone a leader among them. So he's not just sending men, he's sending leaders to check out the land. So let me check this out. Maybe this is God's fault. God said, send the men, send the spies. Isn't he the one that had told Moses to do it? Well, if you read that version, it comes across that way, but there's another version of the same story. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 1, and I pick up at verse 19. Now Moses is telling the people of Israel the same story. He's repeating it to them. So he says to them, so we departed from Horeb and went through all the great and terrible wilderness which you saw on the way to the mountains of the Amorites, as Yahweh our God had commanded us. And then we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you have come to the mountain of the Amorites, which Yahweh our God is giving us. Look, Yahweh your God has set the land before you. Go up and possess it, as Yahweh, God of your fathers, has spoken to you. Do not fear or be discouraged. This is a different rendering than what we read. Let's keep reading. And every one of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us and let them search out the land for us and bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up and the cities into which we shall come. The plan pleased me well. So I took 12 of your men, one man from each tribe. So which way was it? Did God tell Moses, or did the people tell Moses? Or both? Did God instruct Moses or the people? Could it really be both? Well, you know, sometimes God speaks through the people. Sometimes he actually speaks through the people. Take a look at Numbers 27. Numbers 27. I begin in verse 6. Just a backstory, Zelophehad. Zelophehad has seven daughters, okay? Was it 6? 6. Okay, he has 6 daughters. I thought it was 7, but I'm crossing my stories. Thank you. Zelophehad has only daughters, no sons, and the daughters come to Moses and say, listen, well, let's read it. And no, actually, I don't have that part. The daughters come to Moses and say, listen, our father had no sons. He died of his own. He wasn't part of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's mess that we read about this week. Are you going to leave us without land? So Moses takes it up with God. This is where we pick up. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, the daughters of Zelophehad speak what is right. So Zelophehad's daughters brought up the case. Moses goes to God. God says, they are speaking what is right. You shall surely give them a possession of inheritance among their father's brothers, and cause the inheritance, possession. I have lost my space. Let's try this again. You shall surely give them a possession of inheritance among their father's brothers, and cause the inheritance of their fathers to pass to them. And you shall speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a man dies and has no sons, then you shall cause his inheritance to pass to his daughters. By the way, that was, we went down to 5. Thanks for fact-checking me. I appreciate real-life fact-checking. Thank you. Sometimes we get our numbers crossed. Dyslexia is wonderful. Anyhow, God says to Moses, the girls are right. This is new regulation. Before this, we don't see examples of women owning property in the Bible. I mean, that's not the theme of the Bible, but here we see God affirming these ladies and making it a rule in Israelite practice. My friends, there are times that God speaks because his people make a worthy case. In other words, God speaks through his people. But is that the only time that God's voice is heard through the people? Well, there are also times when God speaks because his people make an unworthy case. Case in point, 1 Samuel 8:5, y'all know that story, right? That's when God's people say to Samuel, make us a king to judge over us so we can be like all the other nations. What does God say? Take a look at verse 7. And Yahweh said to Samuel, what? Heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you. The people are giving the wrong message. What is God saying? Heed the voice of the people, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. Wait, stop. Wrong message, wrong time. There would be a king. God has spoken about when you have a king and he gives instructions, but that wasn't the time. That should not have been. But what does God say? Heed the voice of the people. Once upon a time, I felt that as a church leader, that I always had to lead the church to execute God's plan. I felt, that's my job. We've got to do God's plan. But I've learned over time that God does not force his will on his people, and nor should I. I'll share what I think God would like, and when the decision is made, so be it. My friends, here's a point for today. I want you to be mindful of this. This is important. God lets us have our way even if we're wrong. Think about that. God lets us have our way even if we're wrong. How often have you prayed, God, if this isn't good, stop me? There's a few of us are familiar with that prayer. Sometimes we feel if God doesn't want something for us, then he'll block it. He'll close the doors. Maybe. Well, that's not always the case. God won't always block our plans. When we insist on the wrong course of action, God will let us have our way. God does not force people to do the right thing. Why do we as Christians feel we must impose our will on society, especially if God doesn't? God will not superimpose his purpose on us. In fact, the Bible gives us numerous cases of God backing down to our will when people have negotiated with him. Let's consider a few of them. In each case, the person would have either been better off or they would have saved themselves a lot of time if they just let God be God, which I kind of recommend we probably should do. Consider Abraham. God says, I'm going to go destroy Sodom. See you later, Abraham. No. But wait, what if there are 50 people, good, righteous people in the city? Would you destroy the righteous with the wicked? God said, I'd never do that. So, what if there are only 40? All right, you got me. I won't destroy for 30, for 20. He negotiates it all the way down to 10. And then God has to just get up and leave. I'm tired of negotiating with you. He gets them down from 50 to 10. And when they get to Sodom, they can't even find half as many as 10. Couldn't even find 5. 4 came out, and a quarter of them didn't make it. What was the point of all that negotiating? Take a look at the same story further down, and the angel tells Lot, leave the city, go to the mountains. You know what Lot says? No, I can't go to the mountains. Please don't make me go to the mountains. Take a look at Genesis 19:30. The text says, then Lot went up out of Zoar. Well, first he negotiated. Let me go to Zoar. It's a teeny-weeny little city. The angel says, get out of here. Go to Zoar. And then take a look at verse 30. Then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in where? He just negotiated. He couldn't survive in the mountain, so he goes to Zoar. But now he has to leave Zoar, go to the mountain, and his 2 daughters were with him. For he was what? He was afraid to dwell in Zoar. And he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. You should have just listened to the angel the first time. You're over here negotiating with God. Oh, yeah, I know what you said, but let me do this. God says, okay, do that. Let me know how it works out for you. Moses negotiated with God for the people. There are a couple of times, including this story, God says, Moses, get out the way. I'm going to finish them. And Moses is like, no, God, what would the people say if, you destroy all? They're going to say you couldn't do it. God's like, okay, whatever. I'll pardon them. But What happens to Moses? Well, if you go to Deuteronomy and read the story Moses has to share with the people, take a look at Deuteronomy 3, verse 23. This is the result of Moses' negotiation. He's talking to the people. Then he said, then I pleaded with Yahweh at that time, saying, oh, Yahweh God, you have begun to show your great servant your greatness, your mighty hand for what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works, your mighty deeds. Let's keep reading. I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains in Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So Yahweh said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me of that matter. Moses lost his chance to go into the promised land over his own negotiations. You remember that King Hezekiah? You remember that Hezekiah dude? You remember the story? Hezekiah got sick. God sends a prophet, Isaiah. So Hezekiah was going down. Isaiah says, you're going to die. Hezekiah, the Bible says, turns his face to the wall. Oh, man, he negotiates. He pleads with God. God sends Isaiah back. All right, you got 15 more years. You would think that's a good thing, right? But what happened in those 15 years? Do you remember? Manasseh was born. His young son Manasseh was born. And Manasseh ended up being the absolute worst king Judah ever had. What's worse is he was the longest reigning king Judah ever had. Judah would have been much better off if Manasseh had never been born. They might have survived much longer as a nation. What am I getting at? Negotiating with God is always a bad idea. Plainly and simply, negotiating with God is a bad idea. God lets us have our way even if we're wrong. So don't negotiate with God. You just might win. That's the problem. You just might win. God will not impose his will on our lives. He may let us have our way, and then we may just regret it. I confess, I recognize there are times in my life that I negotiated with God and I won and regretted it. Sadly, in Numbers 13 and 14, God's people won that negotiation as well. Let's go back to the text. Let's jump in at chapter 14. And the text says, this is after the 12 spies came back and gave their report. The text says, so all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in the wilderness. Why has Yahweh brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. And Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. But Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them. And Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them. The next verse is probably the challenging one. And all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Now the glory of Yahweh appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before the children of Israel. In other words, God showed up. It's like, okay, y'all got crazy here. You went too far. You've got Caleb and Joshua saying, let's do the God thing. Let's follow God's plan. And now we're trying to kill him. All right, time for God to show up. When the 12 spies came back from their assignment, they determined that the land could not be taken. They determined they could not win against those kind of odds. They decided God couldn't be relied upon. And they convinced the people that it was a bad idea. The whole point of the Exodus had just fallen apart, and God's people were ready to kill God's messengers. While God saved his representatives, he gave the people the win. Yes, he ultimately said, if you think I can't pull it off, you're right. If you think I can't do it, you win. You know, there's a famous quote that's been going around for years. It's credited to Henry Ford, but I suspect it predates him. Maybe you've heard it. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Because what you think, what you believe, you're going to manifest. So if you think you can't, knock yourself out. If we think God can accomplish what he intends to do through us, then we're right. If we think he can't, we're right. My friends, here's the key thing for us to keep in mind. How we relate to God's will determines our experience. See, my friends, God has a will. God has a will. God will restore the world. God will save his own. God will grow his kingdom. God will live among his people. God will make all things new. Whether or not we'll see any part of it is up to us. Let's go back to Numbers 14. Numbers 14, I'm in verse 28. God speaking here. Say to them, as I live, says Yahweh, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. The carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in the wilderness, all of you who were numbered according to your entire number from the 20 years old and above, except for Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. You shall by no means enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. My friends, get this. God will accomplish his will. That's a given. God will accomplish his will. God will achieve his purposes. God will do what he said he will do. It's up to us to determine if we'll have any part of it. Because if we believe he can, we're right. But if we believe he can't, we're also right. So let's imagine that we'd rather experience God's plan. Anyone? Any takers for that fantasy there? Let's say we want to live out God's promises. How do we live in the land of milk and honey? How do we achieve the success that God has in store for us? I mean, he does have something in store. Jeremiah 29:11 tells me what? I know the thoughts I have for you, right? Thoughts of peace and not of evil to give you hope in the future. So let's imagine we want that. How do we live God's promises? Well, fortunately, God gave us examples to follow here. Those examples are called Caleb and Joshua. Caleb and Joshua answer the question for us. While everyone else missed out on God's purposes, those two saw God's promises fulfilled in their lives. What can we learn about them? Well, what happened when the spies came back? Let's back up to chapter 13. Chapter 13, beginning verse 28, the text tells us, nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land in the south. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks. But listen to this, verse 30. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are able to overcome it." What's going on here? Caleb is saying, we can do this. God is on our side. Maybe that's why God said of Caleb in chapter 14:24, "My servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me, fully, I will bring into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it." That's what happens to those who trust in God. But Caleb wasn't alone. Joshua was with him. Take a look at verse 6 through 9 of chapter 14. "But Joshua the son of Nun, Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. They spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, 'The land we passed through to spy out is exceedingly good. If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, and a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, no fear the people of the land, for they are our what? What does it say? They are our what? They are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them." See what's going on there? 12 people go out. 10 leaders, 10 spies. They see the situation, and what do they see? They see giants, but 2 of them see bread. My friends, were they looking at the same thing? They were, but vision matters. Perspective matters. If we wish to experience God's promises, we should adopt God's perspective. Because perspective matters. Perspective is everything. Perspective matters more than sight does. When we face challenges, we should ask ourselves, how are we interpreting what we see? Whose eyes are we seeing the situation through? Are we looking at things through God's eyes or through ours? We don't achieve divine promises without divine perspective, my friends. Let's make sure we see our circumstances through God's point of view and not just our own. Our challenges, our obstacles, our difficulties, they are our bread. They are not the giants. How does God see what I see? Well, I don't know. I need to figure out his perspective and adopt it. If God's not afraid of my future, if God's not afraid of my challenges, if God is not afraid of the obstacles I'm facing in my life, then neither should I. I don't need to be afraid of anything that God is not afraid of. So that's one, adopt God's perspective. Number 2, check your motives. Why do I want this? Or why am I against this? Is our point of view based on faith, or is it based on fear? Because every decision is ultimately based on either faith or fear. What did Joshua and Caleb say? Verse 8, "If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into this land, and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey." Caleb and Joshua interpreted God's bringing them to the border of the promised land as God's favor. If the Lord delights, if Yahweh delights in us, then he'll bring us into the land. What's our motive? How do we express our fears? How do we express our faith? You realize every decision we make is based on faith or fear, right? Every decision, every single last one of them. We can believe God will make things turn out well. We call that faith. Or we can believe that God won't. We call that fear. Faith and fear are the most basic motivators in life. You say, well, what happened to pain and pleasure? Well, it's our perception of pain or pleasure. It's not even pain or pleasure. You know, I've got it on a really good source. I got it from this really good source. She lives with me. That childbirth is painful. At least based on how she said it to me while she was in the process, you know? But I have it on good source that childbirth is painful. So why don't all women in the world avoid it? Why don't all women decide no more childbirth? It's too painful. See, there is faith that on the other side of that pain, there's going to be pleasure, right? So people get pregnant based on the faith that they're going to get through it. So it's not even, our motivation is not even just avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure. It's based on our faith about what is to come. You say, love and hate. Well, sometimes in love, we experience pain, don't we? Because we have faith. And it's really how we see the thing through the eyes of faith or fear that determines if we're going to go through with it. You know, I've had a lot of dental work done this year. It comes from an incident I had over 40, well, getting close to 50 years ago, well, over 40 years ago, where I was getting out of a bunk bed. I was on the top bunk, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was half spaced out, stepped on the bottom bunk, and thought I was on the floor, took the next step, and it wasn't there. And I decided the best place to break my fall is with my mouth. So I landed on my mouth, lost my front tooth, damaged the other one. So I've had lots of dental expenses. And guess what? It's painful, especially when they have to, like, undo a root canal. It's like, that's crazy, the amount of shots I've had. But guess what? Faith in a positive outcome, let me go through with it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about our motives. Are our motives based in faith or are our motives based in fear? What were Caleb and Joshua's motivation? They looked at faith. They said, God can do it. Thirdly, let me move along here. We need to act courageously. You know, it's okay to feel fear and act in faith. By the way, if you don't really feel fear, there's probably really no faith involved. It's okay to feel fear and act in faith. It's okay to be uncertain and still do the right thing. It's appropriate to foresee the problem and still trust in God. My friends, how we feel about what is to come doesn't matter until we act. And yes, not acting is an action. It's our actions that demonstrate our faith or the lack thereof. When the majority were willing to stone Caleb and Joshua demonstrated their faith. They had faith they had faith that God could give them the land, and they acted accordingly. Others had faith that God could not give them the land, and they acted accordingly. Let's take a look at Numbers 14. Numbers 14, verse 36. Now the men whom Joshua sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregation complain against him, bringing a bad report of the land, those very men who brought the evil report about the land died by the plague before Yahweh. But Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, remained alive of the men who went to spy out the land. My friends, you don't have to feel courageous to act courageously. Just do the right thing. Just trust God. Just follow where God leads. So what do we get? What do we get? What do we get out of this? Here's the good news, folks. Here's the good news. When we obey God, God owns the outcomes. When we obey, God owns the outcomes. It's completely His doing. One last passage for you. Joshua chapter 4, beginning at verse 19. And Joshua's talking to the people. Now the people came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. This is 40 years after where we started here. And they camped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal. Then he spoke to the children of Israel, saying, When your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what are these stones? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel crossed over this Jordan on dry land. For Yahweh your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, as Yahweh your God did the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed over. That all the people of the earth may know that the hand of Yahweh is mighty, that you may fear Yahweh your God forever. My friends, God will do it. God will do it. God will do it all by himself. He will get you there. He will get you on the other side of the challenge. He will get you on the other side of the obstacle. If we obey God, God will do it. If we obey, God will make a way. If we obey, God will do the unthinkable. If we obey, God will clear the path for us. If we obey, God will make it happen all by himself. So what do we do from here? What do we do from here? Here's your next step. Let God show himself through your obedience. Maybe he wants to show what humility looks like. Let him show it through you. Maybe he wants to show what miracles look like. Let him show it through you. Maybe he wants to show what grace looks like. Let him show it through you. And maybe he wants to show what hard work looks like. Let him show it through you. Perhaps he wants to show what perseverance looks like. Let him show it through you. Come on up, John. I know he wants to show what faith looks like. Let him show it through you. Prosperity is not the only tool in God's tool bag, but maybe he wants to show prosperity through you. Let him show it through you. Let God show himself through your obedience. Is there someone here who wants to practice obedience in response to what God has said to them? You want God to show obedience through you, just raise your hand as I pray. Our Father and our God, we have a bad habit of not trusting you. We have a bad habit of not believing that you will do what you say you will do. But Father, today we make a decision that we are going to let you work through us. We're going to obey and let you own the outcome. Move your children in that direction and be big in our lives, we pray in Jesus' name.